Hello everyone, I'm going to move this a little bit. So I have a little process for you today, but I'm going to do like a live talk you through beginning. Over in the Rediscover Your Stash Facebook group, this month's product focus is vintage or older collections. So getting the oldest collections out of your stash and using them up. I went ahead and I posted a poll in our Facebook group, and I listed a couple of older collections that I had in my stash, and I let everyone in the group vote on them, and they chose Basic Gray Curio as the collection they wanted me to work with. So I'm going to show you how I'm going to tackle this older collection from my stash. First thing I did was to look and see what I had. So I have a lot of 12 by 12 papers. I have some rub-ons and some clips and 3 epoxy stickers. And then I have some of a 6 by 6 pad, not a lot, just some. So I know right away that I'm definitely going to need some more and some different embellishments. The next thing I did was I went through and I pulled out everything that was a scrap. And my goal, number one, is to use up all of these little bits of paper on my layout. So other than a background paper, I'm going to try my hardest to pull from this stack first and use up those. Another thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and choose a background paper from the pattern papers. And I'm kind of thinking this one, but I'm not sure, and they're double-sided too, but I'm kind of thinking this one. So the next thing I had to do was decide on a photo. And I chose this photo. This is from a wedding a year ago, September. And these are really very, very, very good friends of mine. And actually, she's a scrapbooker and an amazing card maker. So I am going to go ahead and scrapbook this photo from their wedding. And now I know that, number one, I need a way to turn these scraps into some embellishments that I can use, because again, I don't have a ton of embellishments here. And not everything's going to work within the design of my layout. The other thing I'm not sure about is I'm not sure about these epoxy stickers. They are still quite sticky, and I'm pretty sure I could find a use for these too, but I'm not too sure about this one on this particular page. So what I'm going to do is I chose some die cuts. So I have this one, which is a die from Mosaic Moments. It's called the Wildflower set, and it cuts these blocks with a flower in the middle. And I'm thinking about cutting a bunch of these squares. I think this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to cut a bunch of these squares from my scraps, and then I'm going to create either a border down the side of the page or maybe a border across the middle of these fun little squares with the flowers. I also grabbed this die set here, and my thought is to use these little hearts, again, to create some small embellishments that I can pop up with pop dots and ink up and use on my page. And then I also chose this one. This is a die cut from Simon Says Stamp, and it's this large, beautiful, just cluster of greenery, and I thought that would be a really nice addition to this page as well, and it goes with this style. The next thing that I really want to do is I want to make sure that I pull in some things that are lighter, right? I don't want, this is all very dark paper, very dark things, so I pulled doilies out. I'm not sure which size I'm going to use or how I'm going to use them, but I pulled out some doilies because this paper does have pops of white in it. Her dress has pops of white in it. So I feel like white would be a nice way to brighten up this page. I also decided I wanted a bit of sparkle. So from my stash, I also pulled this beautiful pink gold trim. And again, this goes with the theme of the wedding photos and the elements that I have, my die cuts I've chosen, and this will just add a little bit extra texture. And then to continue that idea of texture is I pulled these sequins. These are Hannah's Pasture sequins out of my sequin stash. Now, I'm not real interested in using the silver bits. I want to do gold. But the yellow and the greens look so nice when I put them up against my photo. So I thought little pops of these yellows and greens and the white sequins would also be nice. And remember, I have this die set with the flowers. And I'm thinking for the sequins is to put them in the middle of the flowers as the centers. And that would brighten the page up. The last thing I did pull out was I have these Spring Farmhouse wood spools from Prima. And I think that they would look really nice. They go with the theme and the colors and how she had her wedding designed. And so I might use them. I'm kind of on the fence about these, but I pulled them out because I feel like they really could add a little bit of something different to this page. So now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do a voiceover and speed you up, and we'll see where this page text takes me. But I just wanted to give you an idea of my thought process and how I'm taking a quite old collection. This is from 2010, and kind of freshening it up a little bit and making it work for a layout today.
Okay, so I decided I was going to use this as my background paper. I kind of put the photo up against all of my full 12 by 12 sheets, and that one seemed to be the one that really made it pop. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of decide where I want my photo to be placed. And yeah, I know I want to use the doily, and I'm going to use these die cuts. And I'm thinking about creating like a mosaic tile pattern across the bottom. And then I'm going to take this big die cut from Simon Says Stamp, and I'm going to die cut it a couple times and then twist the trim around it. So I'm just thinking about this for a couple of minutes and deciding if this is really the route I want to go, because I don't want to cut a whole bunch of paper and then not be able to use it or not like the way that it looks. But ultimately, this was kind of the way I decided to go. I know that I'm not going to use the clips, but I'm going to use as many of these rub-ons as I possibly can. Okay, so I went ahead and die cut a whole bunch of those mosaic squares. And then what I'm going to do is I decided that I wanted to back them as well. So I found, what I did was I cut them, and then I found a paper, again from the scraps, that just kind of coordinated or contrasted. And you can see off to the right there that my scrap pile from this collection has dwindled, which is awesome. So what I did here was I'm showing you how I backed those die cuts that I cut, and then I kind of fussy cut around them and put Vintage Photo Distress ink onto the edges. I also put some Vintage Photo Distress ink on the edges of those leafy branches, and I really love those dies. Both of these dies are just fabulous for die cutting elements for scrapbook pages. The big leafy one is just a die cut from Simon Says Stamp and very inexpensive for as large as it is. And the other three are from Mosaic Moments. I might have said that at the beginning when I did my little like talk it through thing. But in my world, that was a couple days ago, so now I totally forget if I did say that or not. So I'm going to go ahead, grab my background paper, and decide how I want to lay these squares out. Or, actually, no. So, what I decided to do is I decided to take the rest of these scraps of paper, these tiny bits that I still had left over, and I'm going to create a couple of elements that I can use on the scrapbook page. And I decided to do that before I put the page together. So, can I just say kudos to Basic Gray? These rub-ons are from 2010, and I honestly thought once I started rubbing them on, they would be a hot mess. They would just forget it. They weren't going to work. They were going to be awful. And they weren't. And they worked really, really well. I only had one that didn't want to stick to my paper, which just utterly amazed me to no end. So that was like super exciting for me. I was super duper excited about that. But yeah, can I just say for real, guys, why don't we make rub-ons like that anymore? Because, I mean, now you get rub-ons and you literally have like a hot minute before they're dried out and done. But these stayed sticky. And I can't blame the climate because I've always lived in the same place. So these have been in the same climate as all of my American Crafts ones that go bad in a heartbeat. So now I'm laying out my grid here and deciding how I want to place these. So what I did end up needing to do was to cut another block. So I'm going to end up with 2 rows of these mosaic die cut pieces. And I'm just going to lay them out here, make sure that they're going to work and that I like the way that they look, right? Just, before you stick anything down, kind of plan it out, give it an idea of whether you like it or not. And so I know already I'm going to have to go ahead and die cut another one of those squares. I do consider the idea of just kind of like filling in that space with something else, but it really wasn't going to look the way I wanted it to. Whew, excuse me, apparently I've not had enough coffee today. And you can see here all those little die cut rub-on pieces that I'm going to kind of add. So I want to add this wreath. Again, this wreath is stunning and beautiful. I've been hoarding it for way too long. And also, it's a rub-on that's almost 10 years old. So let's get it on a page, shall we? So I'm kind of getting an idea here of how I want this to be layered. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to die cut that extra square I need and start to stick everything down. So what I'm going to do here is I kind of glued those 2 leafy bits together so that they kind of became one piece. And now I'm going to kind of weave this gold trim around them, in and around the leaves, just for some little sparkle, some shine, a little bit of something different. What I'm doing is I'm kind of twisting it around, and then at different areas I'm going to go ahead and add my Nuvo Deluxe adhesive. Sorry, I'm just a little bit off camera here. I don't mean to be. I just needed I needed to be able to get it up close to my face and like really make sure it wasn't bending or cutting into or tearing into any of my paper die cuts there. And so that's my plan here, is just to get it glued down so that it is one large piece. And then I can keep going on to the next elements of my layout. So once this is all one big piece, I'm going to go ahead and just adhere it down and then keep going. Next up, let's attack this 10-year-old rub-on, which, okay, for real, I'm amazed. So I did have to go slow, and there were parts that I kind of started to pull up, and they weren't going to pull up, so I had to rub them back on again. But it came off, all in one piece. It wasn't a disaster. It was awesome. So impressed, Basic Gray. Makes me wish you were around even more now. So I'm just going to carefully go through, get this rub-on down, and just add a couple of last-minute bits and pieces. I think the next thing I do is I sequin. Yes! No. I'm going to lay down the little leafy bit here. And then I do take some pop dots, and some of these leaves that are wanting to like pop up anyway, I'm going to give them a little bit of lift with some of the pop dots. And then I'm going to go ahead and start sequining like crazy. So what I did was I added sequins to the centers of all of the die cut mosaic pieces. So all those little flowers. And then I'm just going to grab some clusters. I did use my jewel picker for the centers of the flowers, but as you can see there, for whatever reason, I just quit using it and went ahead and just used my fingers. I don't know. It's weird. Sometimes I just get in the zone and I'm like, who needs a jewel picker? So that's going to complete this layout. I hope you enjoyed this and learning my process and how I kind of went through pulling out one of these older collections and using it on my layout. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you all again soon. Bye.